My parents cheated on me for years, then sued me for $500,000. But then my lawyer showed them this. You can't just cut us off like this. We're family. My mother's voice shrieked through the phone, so loudly that I had to pull it away from my ear. The sheer audacity in her tone sent a fresh wave of rage through my veins. She sounded outraged, like I was the villain in this situation, like I had spent years deceiving and using them. I sat motionless at my kitchen table, staring at the Los Angeles skyline outside my apartment window. It was mid-June, the sun blazing through the glass, but I felt nothing but coldness creeping through my chest. Everything I had believed about my family had shattered in an instant, all because of one accidental text message. A message my sister sent to the wrong group chat. My name is Jake Carter. I'm 32 years old, and up until last night, I thought I was a good son, a damn good brother. I had built a tech consulting business from the ground up after college, and when things finally took off 7 years ago, I started helping my parents out financially. They'd always struggled, living paycheck to paycheck, and I wanted to make sure they could retire without worrying about basic expenses. I never even thought twice about it. What I didn't realize was that to them, I wasn't a son. I was just a walking ATM. The truth hit me like a truck when I saw the messages. My sister, Lauren, had meant to send them to a private chat she shared with our parents. Instead, she sent them to the family group chat, the one that included me. Just got another $5,000 from Jake. That fool doesn't even ask questions anymore. LMAO, keep the cash coming. He's too dumb to realize we've been milking him for years. Mom just booked the cruise. Jake would lose it if he knew his help was paying for it instead of the medical bills. It got worse. Screenshots of conversations going back years, mocking me, strategizing how to squeeze more money out of me, calling me a sucker. I couldn't breathe. Laura must have realized her mistake because she immediately deleted the messages. But it was too late. I had seen everything. Since last night, my phone hadn't stopped ringing. My father insisted they were just joking around. My mother said I was taking it too seriously. Lauren swore she was only going along with it to keep the peace with our parents. But their own words had sealed their fate. I wasn't their son. I wasn't their brother. I was just their personal bank account. A sudden knock pulled me from my thoughts. My grip tightened around my phone as I walked toward the door, already knowing who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Lauren. She stood there on my doorstep, dressed in workout leggings and an oversized hoodie, looking appropriately miserable, though whether it was from guilt or fear of losing her free ride, I wasn't sure. I took a deep breath and opened the door, but I didn't step aside. What do you want? I asked flatly. Lauren's eyes were red-rimmed, either from crying or from rehearsing her act. Jake, please. Just let me explain. Explain what? I barked. How you and Mom and Dad have been laughing at me for years. I held up my phone, still displaying one of her texts. Just told Jake Mom needs an emergency root canal. Let's see how much we can get this time. She winced. It's not what it looks like. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, really? You accidentally called me an idiot and bragged about robbing me blind? Tell me, what exactly was the joke? They started it. She stammered. I went along with it. I shook my head, disgusted. Do you even know how much I've given you all? Lauren swallowed hard. I know it's a lot. $240. 000, Lauren. She paled. 240 grand. I repeated, my voice cold. And that doesn't even include the extra money for Dad's fake hospital bills or Mom's emergency credit card debt. I worked myself into exhaustion while you all took luxury vacations on my dime. Lauren's face crumpled. I know we screwed up, okay? But they really do need your help now. They're in trouble. I let out a humorless chuckle. Oh, let me guess, the mortgage? She nodded desperately. Yes, they're months behind. The bank. You mean the mortgage on the beach house they bought while crying to me about struggling to pay rent? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I felt something inside me snap. I think you should leave. Jake, please. I shook my head. No, I've been Jake, please, for too long. And guess what? I'm done. And with that, I slammed the door in her face. After she left, I collapsed onto my couch, my entire body shaking. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail from my mother. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. For the past 7 years, there it was, $5,000 transferred monthly to my parents' account. And all the fake emergencies. Another $50,000 thrown into the void. What had I sacrificed? I had put off buying a house, passed up vacations, worked through holidays, all while they were upgrading their cars, sipping cocktails in the Bahamas, and mocking me behind my back. I clicked over to the investment account I had secretly set up for them 2 years ago. I had planned to surprise them with a nest egg for their retirement when they turned 70. The balance, $80,000. My finger hovered over the close account button. Not yet. I needed to think this through. Taking a steadying breath, I picked up my phone and dialed the only person I trusted. Megan, I need your legal expertise, I said as soon as she answered. What's wrong? She asked, instantly alert. My family has been scamming me for years. There was silence. Then, in a deadly tone, she said, Tell me everything. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk, my laptop glowing in the dim light as I combed through my finances. I needed to see the full damage. The numbers made me sick. $240,000 in direct transfers. Another $50,000 in fake emergencies. Then there was the $80,000 I had been funneling into their secret retirement fund. $500,000. $500,000 wasted on people who saw me as nothing more than an unlimited credit card. Not anymore. By morning, I had a plan. A scorched earth plan. If they thought they could guilt me into continuing this arrangement, they were in for a rude awakening. I picked up my phone and dialed Megan. They're done, I said, skipping the pleasantries. I'm cutting them off completely. She exhaled, as if she had been expecting this. Good, but we need to do it smart. No loopholes. Where do we start? She outlined everything. First, I needed to cancel all automatic transfers to my parents' bank account. Done. Then, I needed to close the investment fund before they could try to claim any of it. Done. Finally, I needed to remove them from everything. My health insurance, my life insurance, even my emergency contacts. Within an hour, every financial tie to my family was severed. And then the fun part began. The first call came from my mother. I let it ring. The second call came from my father. Ignored. The third was from Lauren, my sister, and it came with a text. Lauren, Jake, what the hell? Mom and Dad just got a notice that their bank account is empty. They can't pay their mortgage. Call me. I smirked. I didn't reply. Then came the knocking. Loud, desperate, angry. I looked through the peephole. My father stood on my doorstep, his face red with fury. My mother was next to him, tears already rolling down her cheeks. Lauren lingered behind them, chewing her nails. They looked like a family in crisis. Not my problem. I didn't open the door. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted Lauren. You have 30 seconds to get them off my property before I call the police. I watched as she pulled out her phone, read the message, and stiffened. She leaned over, whispering something to my parents. My father's fists clenched. He banged on the door again. You ungrateful little bastard, he shouted. We raised you. We took care of you. And this is how you repay us. I let out a cold laugh. Took care of me? I spent my childhood in second-hand clothes, eating microwave dinners while they blew money on themselves. I worked 3 jobs in college while Lauren got a brand new car for her 18th birthday. And yet somehow I owed them? Not anymore. I let them scream. I let my mother cry. I let my father curse my name to the heavens. And then, after exactly 30 seconds, I dialed 911. Yeah, I have trespassers on my property refusing to leave, I said calmly. Yes, I know them. No, I don't want them here. They heard me. My mother gasped like I had stabbed her in the chest. My father's face twisted into something truly ugly. Lauren tried one last desperate plea. Jake, please. We're family. No, I said, staring at her through the peephole. We're not. And with that, I turned around and walked away. The cops arrived 5 minutes later. I watched from the upstairs window as my father tried to argue, as my mother tried to weep her way out of it, as Lauren just stood there, realizing I was serious. They left. For good. I sat down, took a deep breath, and did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. The silence after they left was deafening. For the first time in my life, I had done it. I had cut them off completely. No more guilt trips, no more manipulations, no more pretending. I should have felt relieved. Free. So why did my hand still shake? I poured myself a drink and sat on the couch, staring at my phone. The call log was littered with their names. Missed calls, unanswered texts, voicemails I refused to listen to. Then, finally, one message caught my eye. It wasn't from my parents. It was from Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray. Jake, I just got a call from your dad. He's telling everyone you're abandoning them in their time of need. What the hell is going on? I sighed. Of course, they were running their mouths, painting me as the villain to anyone who would listen. I should have expected it. I debated ignoring him, but Ray had always been decent to me. The one relative who never asked me for anything. So I called him back. He picked up on the first ring. Jake. Hey, Uncle Ray. Jesus, kid. Your father sounded like he was about to have a heart attack. Said you're leaving them to rot in the streets. I snorted. Yeah, well, he also said he needed heart surgery last year and used the money I sent for it to buy a new boat. So you'll excuse me if I don't believe him. There was a long silence. He did what? They scammed me, Ray. For years. I've been paying their mortgage, their medical bills, their everything while they've been living it up behind my back. I finally cut them off, and now they're freaking out. Another pause. Then a low chuckle. You finally grew a spine. Good for you. That threw me. You're not going to tell me to forgive them? He let out a tired sigh. Jake, I love your dad, but he's always been a selfish bastard. Your mom, too. That's why I don't deal with them much. But you were always the good one. I knew they were taking advantage of you, but I figured you'd figure it out on your own. Would have been nice to get a warning, I muttered. Would you have believed me? I hesitated. No, I wouldn't have. You did the right thing, kid, he continued. They're just pissed because their free ride is over. They'll survive. They always do. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt something close to relief. Thanks, Ray. Anytime. And hey, if they keep harassing you, block him. They'll never stop if they think there's still a chance you'll cave. Yeah, I said, gripping my phone. I think I will. The next few days were a storm. My parents took their sob story to Facebook, posting dramatic statuses about how their ungrateful son had abandoned them. Lauren messaged me nonstop. Lauren, Mom is crying every night. How can you do this to them? Lauren, they're talking about selling the house. Lauren, Dad says he'll never forgive you. Lauren, answer me. I didn't. Then a new text. Dad, you've made your choice. Just know that when we're gone, you'll have to live with what you've done. The guilt trip. The last desperate move in their playbook. I smirked and typed back. Me, I'll sleep just fine. Then I blocked their numbers. Every single one of them. I expected to feel guilt, pain, regret. I felt nothing. For the first time in my life, I was truly, finally free. Cutting them off wasn't just a decision, it was a battle. A war between who I had been and who I was becoming. The weight of years of obligation, guilt, and expectation didn't disappear overnight. It lingered, clawing at the edges of my mind, whispering doubts, trying to pull me back into the web they had spun around me since childhood. But I refused to let it win. The first morning of true freedom was unsettling. I woke up expecting to see missed calls, expecting another manipulative text, expecting something. But the silence was deafening. It was the kind of quiet that stretched on, making me wonder if I had made a mistake. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't regret, it was withdrawal. A lifetime of being conditioned to serve, to please, to provide. And now, there was nothing left for them to take. Days turned into weeks. My father's last text, his pathetic attempt at a guilt trip, still sat in my blocked messages folder, frozen in time. I didn't unblock him. I didn't unblock any of them. Instead, I focused on reclaiming my life, one piece at a time. The first thing I did was reclaim my finances. I hired an accountant to go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, making sure there were no lingering financial ties to my parents. No forgotten joint accounts. No outstanding debts I had foolishly co-signed for. I cleaned house. Then, I redirected my money to something that actually mattered, my future. For years, I had poured my hard-earned cash into the bottomless pit of their greed. Now, it was time to do something for myself. I put a down payment on a condo overlooking the city, a place that was mine and mine alone. No family leeches, no ghosts of past obligations, just me and a future I could actually look forward to. But money wasn't the only thing they had drained from me. They had taken time. Time I could have spent traveling. Time I could have used to grow my business. Time I could have invested in relationships that weren't built on lies and manipulation. So I made up for it. I booked a last-minute trip to Europe, something I had always wanted to do, but never could because there was always another emergency to handle. Walking through the streets of Rome, staring up at the Eiffel Tower, watching the sunset over the canals of Amsterdam, I felt something I hadn't in years. Their absence was no longer a void. It was a blessing. But that didn't mean they were gone. No, people like them never truly disappear. When I returned home, I found out they had reached a new level of desperation. My father had contacted distant relatives, spinning his usual sob story about how I had heartlessly abandoned them in their time of need. Some relatives bought it. They called, left voicemails laced with passive-aggressive messages about family loyalty. Others, the ones who knew what my parents were really like, ignored it entirely. But there was one unexpected turn of events that even I hadn't predicted. The house. They had put the house on the market. The same house I had unknowingly funded for years. The same house they swore was their last security. The one they desperately needed help keeping. And yet, the moment the money stopped flowing, they were willing to get rid of it. It was proof of what I had always suspected. My money had never saved them. It had only fueled their greed. They were fine. They had always been fine. They just wanted more. Seeing that for sale sign in front of their house was the final nail in the coffin. The last confirmation that cutting them off had been the right decision. I wasn't their son. I was never their family. I had been their investment. And now, that investment was gone. For the first time in my life, I was untouchable. And I intended to keep it that way. Months passed, and the silence became normal. The absence of their voices, once a constant weight in my life, had faded into nothing more than a distant memory. I had moved on, truly and completely. My business was thriving. My new home finally felt like mine. And for the first time in years, my finances were being spent on things that actually mattered to me. But just when I thought they were gone for good, they found a way to drag themselves back into my life one last time. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother's. I debated throwing it away without reading it. But some part of me, the part that still clung to the scraps of what should have been, made me open it. The letter was exactly what I expected. A desperate plea. An attempt at rewriting history. My mother claimed they were struggling, that without my support, their lives had crumbled. She said they had lost the house, that my father's health was failing, that they were destitute and alone. She painted a picture of two broken people, abandoned by their selfish son. But nowhere in the letter was there an actual apology. No acknowledgement of their lies, their manipulation, their greed. Just blame. Just another desperate attempt to guilt me into saving them. I set the letter down and exhaled slowly. There was a time when reading something like this would have sent me spiraling, would have made me question everything. But now it just felt pathetic. I didn't respond. Instead, I took the letter, placed it in the shredder, and watched as the paper disappeared into nothing but fragments. The last remnants of their hold on me, finally destroyed. A week later, I learned that they had left the state. A distant cousin mentioned it in passing. How my parents had packed up and moved in with some old friends across the country. The news barely registered. I felt nothing. No sadness. No relief. Just indifference. And that was when I knew, beyond any doubt, that I had won. They had taken everything from me. My time, my trust, my kindness. And yet, in the end, I was the one who walked away with something they would never have. I had reclaimed my life. Built something real. Something untouchable. And as I stood on the balcony of my home, staring at the city skyline, I finally understood. Freedom isn't just cutting people off. It's realizing they never had power over you to begin with. And I was free. It wasn't enough for them to take my money, my trust, my years of sacrifice. No, they had to try one last time, to take my peace. 3 months after I shredded their letter, they resurfaced. Not in another pitiful plea or a desperate attempt to slither back into my life. No, this time, they went nuclear. They sued me. I found out through an email from my lawyer, Megan. Attached was a legal document, a lawsuit from my own parents. They were claiming financial abandonment and emotional distress, demanding a lump sum of $500,000 for damages. I laughed. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Megan, on the other hand, wasn't amused. They're trying to intimidate you, she said over the phone. They have no legal standing, but if this gets dragged out, it could be a hassle. A hassle? For me? I had spent years bankrolling their lifestyles, bending over backward to make sure they were comfortable while they bled me dry. And now, they were demanding even more? Oh, I was done playing nice. We met in court 2 months later. They walked in looking the part, disheveled, gaunt, dressed like they had barely scraped together the money for gas to get there. A well-rehearsed performance, no doubt. I sat across from them in a tailored suit, calm, composed, and absolutely unmoved. Their lawyer, a sleazy, sweat-slick man, tried to paint me as a cold, ungrateful son who had abandoned his loving parents in their time of need. He used words like heartless and cruel. Megan responded with facts. She laid out years of bank statements, transfers, text messages, a full paper trail of their greed, the vacations, the luxury purchases, the blatant mockery of my generosity. The judge barely let them speak after that. By the time it was over, the case was thrown out with prejudice. Not only that, but the judge ordered them to reimburse my legal fees. My parents, who had spent their lives draining me dry, were now legally indebted to me. Oh, the irony. I never saw them again after that. They left town, this time for good, slinking away like the parasites they were. Lauren? She sent me one last message, a half-hearted attempt at reconciling. I left it on read, because that part of my life, dead and buried. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a man free of chains, no longer a puppet to their greed, no longer drowning in their expectations. I won, not just in court, not just financially, but in life. And nothing had ever felt so good.